I am joined by the esteemed Mike Carmen and Brian Newbert, and I'm Alan Karpik, and we're looking at a really important win, obviously, last night. Purdue 75-70 win over Michigan to run its record to 20-1. And Mike, you were in the environment at Chrysler Arena last night. Some Purdue fans there, but obviously a pretty raucous Michigan crowd, and Purdue just seemed to find a way to get it done at the right time and withstand a number of almost a crazy ending, but a huge win from Purdue. A lot of different contributors. Just your analysis of what you saw.
First of all, there were plenty of Purdue fans there last night amongst the pink for their cancer game. But to me, the big, from my perspective, was just the bench and the production of those four guys. And they've, for the most part this year, they've played well, but I don't think they've had the production in the Big Ten game that they had last night. And I think it was great to see Trey Kaufman-Renn finally see the ball go through the hoop. I think he can be a vital piece down the stretch here in the second half of the Big Ten season to give Zach, a few extra minutes on the bench, but also keep the production going there at the center position. And David Jenkins was huge. The first, 14 minutes in the first half, and allowed Braden Smith to settle down after two fouls. And that's the thing about, what the bench did. Purdue got in some foul trouble last night, but they were able to get through it because of what the guys did from the reserves. And then, Newman hits the free throws at the end, also had 6 rebounds. But, Mason Gillis did what I think everybody expects him to do, and that's make every play that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. And he did that more and more again last night. And that group, I really think, pushed Purdue to the victory, even though, they got out to double-digit lead in the first half and maintained it. But those four guys were a big reason why they were able to be in the position they were at the end of the game.
Brian, the context of this win obviously puts Purdue it's already was in the pole position, so to speak, to win the Big Ten championship. Obviously, Sunday would be another big step for Purdue, but talk about just that, but also the fact of beating Michigan in Ann Arbor for the first time in 5 years and kind of maybe exercising to some extent, not that there were a lot of guys in this team that played there last year, but you took care of business in a place that has been a challenge for Purdue, at least over the last 5 years.
Yeah, well, I think Michigan's been good. I think that's part of it. But when you look at how the series has played out, I kind of thought Purdue owed them one because, you kind of go back in this series and there's the game where it's the first game after they lose Stefanovic to COVID a few years back. And then you go to the game where Travion Williams gets like 36 and 20 up there. You lose in double overtime. That was a game Purdue could have won. Last year Michigan gets COVID and that breaks their schedule in a way where they get Purdue right at the tail end of this grueling Big Ten schedule stretch. And, Purdue, that's the one game Purdue didn't even show up for last year. So Purdue kind of owed them one. So for them to get Michigan without Jet Howard, and I don't know what kind of difference he would have made, because it's not like Kobe Buffkin wasn't a problem for Purdue at times.
No doubt.
Because that's another pro level shot maker and athlete. But I thought Purdue kind of owed them one. And, for Purdue to keep winning on the road, for Purdue to keep winning, period, is a big deal. But for Purdue to keep winning on the road is just, that's how you win Big Ten titles. You win Big Ten titles by winning games on the road and by not showing some random game away from your home floor on a Wednesday night on BTN at 9:00, not losing to Nebraska or Minnesota, things like that. You can split the Michigan States and Wisconsins of the world, but when you start just showing road games here and there, that's when you can lose a Big Ten title before you can win one, if that makes any sense. I can't remember what the other part of your question was.
I'm not sure what it was either. So, Mike, can you help us out? No, I think you answered just the context also of the Big Ten race. I mean, you're in damn good shape if you're Purdue.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do a whole lot better than 9-1 unbeaten on the road. If you can get Sunday, get to 10-1 at the turn, you've pinned 2 losses on Michigan State. You've pinned a loss on Michigan. You've pinned a loss on Maryland. You've pinned losses on a lot of your contenders. Now you can't take anything for granted because you've still got Indiana twice. You've still got got Illinois once. You still got Iowa. You still got to go to Maryland. It's not like it gets easier in the back end. But you would have some margin for error. You can afford to lose a game here and there. That's not what you want to do, but you would have some margin for error. And, the possibility still exists that Purdue could use some margin for error at some point, because this has just been this kind of magic carpet ride of a season here where no one in their wildest dreams would have ever thought Purdue would be 20-1 after 21 games. But everything about what Purdue has done so far, and this was the main point I took away from the Minnesota game, everything they've done this year speaks to consistency. I don't think they're going to beat themselves. I think they're very unlikely to just not show up for a game. I don't think they're going to phone any in. I think whoever beats Purdue the rest of the way is going to have to beat them. I don't think Purdue's going to beat itself the way last year's team beat itself way too often.
Mike, you stood next to David Jenkins Jr. after his, I think it's best performance as a Boilermaker. I don't think that's probably not arguable. He certainly is most important. And, Braden Smith still may not have been quite as good last night, but still did some really good things. But just how much does that mean, to have David Jenkins and just maybe talking to him and what was going through his mind of really making a major contribution in a game that Purdue needed everything he brought to the table yesterday.
Well, I think this goes back to the theme of these guys where they are ready when they come off the bench. Now, the production doesn't always follow when they come off the bench, but they appear to be ready. And when, and Matt Painter has talked about this a lot, when guys get extended minutes that come off the bench for whatever reason, Trey Kaufman or David Jenkins or Brandon Newman or Mason Gillis, they're better. And they get in a rhythm and they're better. Now, that allows you to sit a Braden Smith when he has 2 fouls, or allows you to keep somebody on the bench that you're going to need in the second half. And Braden did a great job in the second half when he was in there. But I just think these guys are ready. And even though the ball hasn't gone in the basket for Trey Kaufman, most of the Big Ten season, it went in the basket at the right time last night. And what kind of springboard can that be for him? Because you start looking at what you can. Zach E is going to give you a pretty consistent 20 and 10 game every time, but if you can add 5 to 8 more points to that position and maybe 5 rebounds to that position, that this really enhances their game and it enhances Purdue's games, and it opens up a lot of things. But those bench players have been ready all year. And finally they got the production to go with it last night.
Yeah. Brian, you've been watching Trey Kaufman run for what seems like years. Obviously his game has changed.
It doesn't seem like years. It's been years.
Yeah. And he certainly brings that to the table of being an inside, a post presence, which is maybe not what he always was, but he is now. I mean, talk about that development and what you see for him, not only in his role this year, but as he continues to develop. I mean, we expect to see more of some other things from him as time goes on, or what do you think?
Well, I think he's going to be really good. I think he's in a transitional phase as a player. Like the first time I saw him, he was a high school sophomore. He was Vince Edwards. He was that kind of wiry, sort of inside out player. And over time, he's just gotten bigger. He's gotten stronger. He started playing with an edge to him from a physical perspective. I think during his redshirt year, he was focused on getting bigger and stronger. And I don't want to say he took it too far, but I think he became big and strong. He didn't get bigger and stronger. Now he still has to continue on with that. He's going to have to get quicker over time. He's going to have to get better defensively. He's going to want to become a more consistent perimeter shooter to be an inside-outside guy. But I think that game last night was the payout for his work ethic too. The one thing that really stands out about that kid is he works like crazy. And, he's been struggling in Big Ten play. We've all seen him around the arena. He walked in the back of one of my videos after one of those games, coming back into the arena to put in more work after he had struggled that day. And he just kind of had this coming. And I think that was a huge part of the math of this game. When you look at when Edey and Hunter Dickinson were out of the game, Purdue's guy came in and produced offensively at an Edey-like level. He was 4-4 for 8 points, could have had 9 points if he finished off one of the N1s. I think there was only one turnover, if I recall correctly, on a bad screen. Meanwhile, Michigan's backup center comes in, gets called for a technical foul that really was the start of Purdue's run.
Yeah.
Didn't give them a whole lot else. I think Juwan Howard's not helping his team by playing Terrace Reed and Hunter Dickinson together. I think that kind of allowed Purdue to kind of do that one-man zone thing with Zach Edey. Whether or not that was a net positive for Purdue, I don't know. But I think for as much as we talked about the battle of the two premier big men in this game, it was the backups that really loomed large in this, and Purdue won that by a wide margin. That's because of Trey Kaufman.
Mike, Sunday's game, Michigan State comes calling. Indiana is Purdue's A rival, but Michigan State may be A1, so to speak. And yet Tom Izzo, much has been documented and talked about his call out to the officiating after the Michigan State Purdue game a couple of weeks ago. Michigan State hung on. They need the signature win, though I think they're probably pretty safe at getting in the NCAA tournament if they continue to play kind of at the level they're at. But what pitfalls do you see on Sunday in front of what will be a raucous environment? What is it, 15,000 white shirts, throwback jerseys on down the line? I mean, it's going to be a big time environment in Mackey.
Well, I mean, that was a very close game a couple of weeks ago in East Lansing, and it easily could have gone to Michigan State, but Purdue made the plays down the stretch. So what does Michigan State change in how they defend Edey? Are they going to double him at some point to give themselves a better chance, or are they just going to stay stubborn and play one-on-one and give up twos and hope not to give up threes in that situation? I thought Zach could have had 40 Thursday night if they kept going to him, because as much as Hunter Dickinson was body checking him down low, Zach was in a rhythm, especially going to his left hand. And if he can get that going again, then, he's unstoppable against anybody in the Big Ten. But, Purdue's got to figure out to cool off Tyson Walker, who seems to have a flair for scoring a lot against Purdue. So they've got to keep him in check. And, then they've still, they're going to have to rebound well again because of what, that's what Michigan State does really well. And you're going to still have to get some production off the bench. It probably won't be at the same level, but that's part of the consistency that you want to see from this team now in the second half of the Big Ten season. Your starters are going to give you what they give you, but what are you going to get from the guys off the bench? And if they can just maintain a level of production and not lose leads, but build them and maintain them, so when the starters get back, then that'll be a positive. But as much as you talk about the bench, Fletcher Loyer once again in the second half Thursday night kind of stepped up. He's become a second half player for this team, and he's, as we all know, he's not fazed by the moment, enjoys the moment. And I think this team does enjoy being yelled at, being screamed at, and what other words the fans use against them. I think they enjoy that and they thrive in that. And I do think that motivates them to a certain point.
Yeah, no question. One change for Michigan State, Brian, will be Malik Hall's return. He did return last night on Thursday night against Iowa and was impressive. He had an impressive dunk and was very mobile. I didn't watch that entire game, but what difference does that make, and how do you see Sunday playing out for Purdue?
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Michigan State now can go to lineups where they have Malik Hall and Joey Hauser as their 4 and their 5. You're not going to be able to guard Zach Edey that way, but they'd have to do something creative in that regard. That way you'd have 2 perimeter guys out there. And what you see against Purdue is you see people really trying to isolate Edey in space to either drive past him or shoot over him. He's doing a much better job with that than I think anybody that size can be reasonably expected to do. But it's still the realities of being 7'4", 290 pounds or whatever he is. So Michigan State's ability to play small ball in that regard might be enhanced a little bit, but I would look for them to go back to what kind of worked for them in East Lansing. They were running Caleb First and Mason Gillis off a lot of off-ball screens and getting Joey Hauser to the basket, getting Joey Hauser jump shots. I would expect that to be a big part of what they do. Now, from a defensive perspective, what they do, I don't know. Izzo tends to do things the same way, and continues to go one-on-one in the post, ask an awful lot of not only his center, but of the officials. And, obviously he started to lobby publicly right after that Purdue game, knowing full well he was going to play Purdue again in 2 weeks. And you just hope for Purdue's sake and for the sake of, the integrity of college basketball that refs aren't swayed by that. I thought that first foul on Edey last night was insane, was classic. We just called Hunter Dickinson for a foul. This has to be even.
Right.
Because he didn't impede his progress one bit on that end one. So you just hope, once again, for the sake of the integrity of Big Ten basketball, people don't say, oh, well, after the last game, Tom Izzo was upset that Zach Edey didn't get called for fouls, so we're going to give Zach Edey 3 fouls today. That's just kind of the one thing about refs is that they are human beings too. And, they probably have the same urge we do to shut our critics up, and
full-time job.
That's not supposed to happen to you necessarily on your home floor, but you do kind of worry that, Edey might get a call or two that haven't gone against him, start going against him, starting with this game tomorrow. It's just a matter of, I thought Painter's comment after the game was really good about how when Tarris Reed got called for the technical, that the refs would even it up real quick. So keep your mouth shut. And that might be kind of the story of what I'm talking about here, is where Purdue just has to be extra careful because they might be looking to call something at times.
Yeah, no doubt that's going to be fine. All right, landscape of the Big Ten. Mike, we talked a little bit about this before we started this segment. It's not over yet, but it still seems like a lot of mishmash between teams number 2 through 12, maybe in the league. There's going to be some teams that are going to lose games. I understand Northwestern and Rutgers, as it stands on Friday, are at 3 losses. Rutgers is a rough road to hoe. Everybody's got a rough road to hoe in the Big Ten, but what do you see? Do you see anybody emerging? Is it Indiana that's going to emerge out of this group? How do you see that?
I don't know if it'll be Indiana, but probably Indiana, based on they have 2 games against Purdue, probably is in the best position to potentially catch Purdue, or at least draw even with them, hoping that Purdue will, lose at Maryland or, somewhere else along the line in the month of February. And Indiana would need to beat Purdue twice, I think, to have a chance. But right now, they would be the team. We all question whether Northwestern can keep up what it's doing, and we won't know that answer until the end of the season, or we won't be convinced of that answer until the end of the season. Rutgers doesn't appear to have the offense to go on an 8 or 9 game winning streak. So this is Purdue's championship to lose right now, and they can absorb a loss and still win. My only kind of concern regarding the Big Ten is just them staying sharp as you get through this thing, because they keep winning, they could clinch this thing in the middle of February. If chaos really goes through the middle part of the league, they could wrap this thing up in, with 4 games to go, 5 games to go, depending on what happens, and you just want to stay sharp after that. But I think a win Sunday, if it doesn't convince you Purdue's going to win the league, it will. That will win the league for you. And then at that point, I think as you get through February, you're looking at bigger goals and bigger picture things as far as where you want to be when the NCAA tournament starts. The Big Ten championship is still important to a program like Purdue, but there's bigger things ahead for this team. And as Brian has mentioned throughout the year, you just want to see them stay consistent with their play, with their performance, and kind of let things play out from there.
Yeah, Brian, anything to add to that? Because you talked about, basically you beat Michigan State and Michigan. It's really going to be hard for anybody to catch Purdue, especially how Purdue's playing. Is that still pretty much the way you look at things?
Yeah, I think that Purdue has done just enough to stay above the fray. I think it does bear mentioning that the difference between Purdue being 9-1 in the Big Ten right now, and Purdue being part of that 12-team quagmire is Fletcher Lawyer's 3 at Ohio State, Zach Edey's game winner at Michigan State, and overtime at Nebraska. Now, that being said, Rutgers, obviously that comes down to a game winner too, but Purdue's ability to be 4-1 in really close games is a pretty narrow difference between them and everybody else in that league. No one in that middle has really emerged as that threat to Purdue. So it's that old line from The Godfather that, our true enemy is yet to reveal themselves, whatever word it was. I heard you mention Indiana before. I don't know if you watched the Minnesota game, but
oh yeah, I did.
Yeah, I watched it, but
that was the first quad 3 loss that ever came out of a win. Who else in the Big Ten can win 3 games in a row, let alone 9? It's
I only say
everybody's
Indiana.
even. Everybody's even. And
I only say Indiana because they get to play Purdue twice.
Yeah,
and that's nobody else gets. I mean, Northwest. I guess does Northwestern play Purdue twice? I can't remember.
Just once.
Just once. But Indiana has the best position because they can chop 2 games off that lead, but then they have to take care of business in other games.
Yeah, I was just kind of using them as an example of
right.
Who else in the Big Ten is good? I mean, Purdue's #1 in the country. Nobody else is ranked. Not that that's scripture by any means. Not that that's a stone tablet, but who else is good? Who else can be consistent? I don't know. Michigan State gets Malik Hall back yesterday and might have lost that game at home to Iowa yesterday. If Iowa could throw a pass to a shooter's torso and not his feet to win the game. I don't know. I have no idea who else is good. I have no idea who the threat to Purdue would be as of this moment.
Yeah, good question. Illinois also, we didn't mention them, but they lose to Indiana at home. Who the heck knows? I'll take the field if we have to say if Purdue going to run the table, but still, you got some cushion and likely more cushion to come as teams 2 through 13 or 2 through 12 beat up on each other through the rest of this conference schedule. All right, guys. So we appreciate all your wonderful clairvoyance of how this is all going to play out here in the next period of time. And we'll look forward to more wisdom here down the road after Purdue, Michigan State on Sunday, that game 12:15 in Mackey Arena. Want to thank our sponsors, XXX, State Farm agent Trent Johnson. XXX also on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. And trendismyagent.com. And thank also Gordon and Mary back at WLFI for making this happen. We'll be back next week with more of this wonderful show, Golden Black Live. We appreciate all of you for watching and listening, and we'll look forward to that next week. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next week on Golden Black Live.